Hello class, welcome to our third and final video about special right triangles. Now we're going to be combining our special right triangles into big giant problems together. So it is very important that you always pay attention to which type of triangle you're dealing with. Is it a 45, 45, 90? In which case the proportions of the sides would be 1, 1, and root 2. Or is your triangle a 30, 60, 90? Remember, in your 30, 60, 90 triangle, the proportions are all a little bit different. You've got 30 and 1. The side opposite the 60 is root 3. And then the side that is the hypotenuse is 2. Okay? It's important that you don't mix up these two triangles because it's going to throw off your answers whenever you do this. So let's look at a few. This one says find the values of x and y. So if you notice here, you have a 30, 60, 90 triangle that I'm highlighting in blue right now. And then over here, you have a 45, 45, 90 triangle that I'm labeling pink. Now, there are no numbers in the 45, 45, 90 triangle. We just have y, which tells me that I really need to start over here in the 30, 60, 90 triangle. So again, I always find it very, 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 very helpful to take my special triangle and draw it in the same direction that my triangle that I'm dealing with is. So my side opposite the 30 would be 1, adjacent to the 30 or opposite the 60 would be root 3, and then the hypotenuse is 2. So this, comparing this little green triangle to my original triangle, I'm given the short side, which means that I can always just multiply everything by the short side. This is the easy problem to solve. So this is 4. If this is 4, then this has to be 4 root 3, and this has to be 2 times 4, which is 8. So x is going to end up being 4 root 3. And even though it didn't ask me to find the hypotenuse, I kind of need it. I need the 8 so I can figure out y. This triangle that I labeled in pink is a 45, 45, 90. So its sides are 1, 1, and root 2, or in the proportion of 1, 1, and root 2. So then, since I'm dealing with a proportion, this one isn't as simple to solve. So I am going to set up a proportion. So I'm finding y, which corresponds to 1, which equals 8 over root 2. The hypotenuse corresponding with the hypotenuse. Now I have y over 1. Y over 1 is just y. And then I just have to deal with 8 over root 2. Being a good math student, I'm always going to rationalize my denominators. So I have 8 root 2 over root 4, which is 8 root 2 over 2. And I wouldn't stop there, because you have 8 root 2 over 2. The 8 and the 2 can simplify. And you're left with 4 root 2, which is y. Let's look at the next one. This one says find the perimeter. So right away, what's jumping out at me is I see a 45, which means that over here I have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Now perimeter means you add up all the sides. So all of the sides here are going to be in this proportion 1, 1, and root 2. But when I'm adding up all the sides, I'm actually going here, and then here, and then here, and then there. That's what I'm trying to find. All the sides that I've labeled pink. So, again, this is a leg. So, if that's 3 root 2, then this is also going to be 3 root 2. Now, this is kind of a simpler one because I know a leg. If I know a leg, that means that the hypotenuse has to be 3 root 2 times root 2. Or I could just use the Pythagorean theorem. But that's 3 root 4, which equals 3 times 2, which is 6 for this side. Now I have to turn to the other triangle over here on the right. if I know the hypotenuse is 3 root 2, this is the hypotenuse, but what type of triangle am I dealing with? You saw that I labeled this as a 45. If this angle right here is 90, that means this piece is 45 and that piece is 45, which means yet again I have another 45, 45, 90. So now I can set up a proportion. I'm looking for this side, which I will label, we'll just call it x. So x is my leg, so x over 1 has to equal 3 root 2 over root 2. So I have x over 1, which is just x, and then I have 3 root 2 over root 2. The root 2's just cancel, and I'm left with 3. Now this problem says find the perimeter, so that means I add up all the outside sides. So 3 plus 3 plus 6 plus 3 root 2. And be careful, you can add these 3. 3 plus 3 plus 6, that's 12. But you cannot combine the 3 root 2 with the 12. Those are different types of numbers, so you just stop here. 12 plus 3 root 2. We're not looking for decimal approximations, so we stop. This next one says find the value of x, and this is one of those kind of spiral problems. We've talked about these before, doing like Pythagorean theorem and stuff like that. But now we're just doing 30, 60, 90s. So we want this side all the way over here, but we only really know stuff about this first triangle that I'm marking in purple right now. So I'm actually just going to draw that. So right away, that's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And I'll go ahead and I'll draw this 30, 60, 90 triangle over here. The basic one. 30, 1, 60, root 3, and 2. Now, I don't really need to find both sides of this triangle. I really only need this side. I'll label it A, because this side is the hypotenuse of the second triangle. And then if I find this side here, which I'll label B, then I would have the hypotenuse of the third triangle, which would then help me find x. So that's kind of my game plan. I could find these sides out here if I wanted to, but I don't actually have to. So let's set up a proportion. 16 is the hypotenuse, so it's 16 over 2 equals A over root 3. First, 16 over 2 is 8. Then I have A over root 3. So I can multiply both sides by root 3 to get rid of the fraction. Be careful, I wrote this in the wrong order. My answer should be 8 root 3 equals A. So this is 8 root 3. Now basically I have to repeat the process again. So I'm going to draw this triangle outside of my original one just to make life a little bit easier on myself. So I have 8 root 3 here. Now I'm looking to find side B. And I still have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So this proportion is almost exactly the same as the previous proportion. I've got 8 root 3 over 2 has to equal B over root 3. And again, this actually simplifies. I have 8 over 2. 8 over 2 is 4. So that's 4 root 3. Then I can multiply both sides by root 3. And the root 3's cancel, which is nice. And then I have root 3 times 4 times root 3. So that's 4 root 9, which is 4 times 3, which is 12. And don't freak out. 12 is actually smaller than 8 root 3. So it's still not longer than the hypotenuse. So you're doing everything correct. So now, finally, after all that, I can actually find x, what I'm looking for. So now 12 is the hypotenuse. So it's still going to be 12 over 2, because it's the hypotenuse of the green triangle. equals x over root 3, because x is the long side, or the long leg. I have 6 equals x over root 3, because 12 over 2 is 6. Then just like before, I'll multiply to get rid of the fraction. So I have 6 root 3 equals x. And I'm finished. That problem seemed very complicated, but once you realize that it was the same process over and over again, it's not too terribly bad. Now I have find the perimeter of the largest triangle. The largest triangle would be the triangle on the outside. Again, perimeter is all of the edges. So here, and there, and there. Now, all of these are labeled 60, well, which means that the outside triangle is a equilateral triangle. So we just have to find one of the sides. Judging by the fact that this is a 30, and then this would be a 60, because this is a right triangle, which means this is a 60, which means this would be a 30. So this inside triangle is also going to be a 30, 60, 90 triangle. And when you combine the two inside triangles together, you get each side measuring 60. So if I can find like this side or this side, I would actually have all of the measurements that I need. So let's work on that. This is kind of hard to tell, but 5 root 3 over 2 is representing this measurement right here, the altitude of the triangle. And since this is 5 root 3 over 2, that's 30. So this is the long leg of the hypotenuse, or of the triangle. And in fact, let's just draw it outside. There's a lot of stuff happening in there. And you can find whatever you want. I think I'll just find this. And there's 30. So I have x over 1 has to equal 5 root 3 over 2 over root 3. Because remember, I didn't draw it, and I should have. That's your 30, 60, 90. So x is your short side, and root 3 is your long side. Now this is a little rough, it's a little scary, but it's not too terribly bad. So let's kind of tackle this. I think I'll cross multiply this. X has to multiply to root 3. So I have x times root 3 equals 1 times that fraction. So 5 root 3 over 2. Then I don't really like this fraction, so I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. So I have 2x root 3 equals 5 root 3. Now I can divide by the root 3's, and in fact, they're just going to cancel each other out. So I have 2x equals 5, which means x equals 5 over 2. Which means this piece right here is 5 over 2. Which means this piece right here is also 5 over 2. Which means this whole piece is 5 over 2 plus 5 over 2, which is 5. Which means this is going to be 5, and this is going to be 5. Why? Because that triangle is an equilateral triangle in the middle. When you have an equilateral triangle in the middle like that, on the outsides, all of these are then going to also be equilateral triangles. So all of these pieces are 5. So this is 5 plus 5, which is 10, 5 plus 5, which is 10, and then 5 plus 5, which is 10. So 10 plus 10 plus 10, the perimeter is 30. And this last one is kind of a thought question. Notice it's multiple choice, but it still deals with 30, 60, 90 triangles. In the figure above, find the length of AB in terms of A. So looking at A, the first thing that jumps out at me is over here on the right. I have a 45, 45, 90, which means that's A. Now, since this is a 45, 45, 90, And this is a 30, 60, 90 triangle over here on this end. That makes me think that a couple of my multiple choice answers are going to be super duper wrong. Like this one, 2A. That doesn't really make sense because I know this measurement here is not going to be A as well. So let's go through. If this is a 30, 60, 90 here, the triangle that I am coloring light blue, then it has to be in the same scale as this. 30 and 1, 60 and root 3, and 2. I only care about the bottom side. I care about this side. So the short side is A. The short side is A, which means the long side has to be A root 3. So right away that means that A root 3 is also wrong because A root 3 is the length of the entire, is just the short side. And I want the whole bottom here, which would be A root 3 plus A, which is this one. This is just A plus root 3, which is incorrect. And then A plus root 2 would have been if you would have mistaken this for the second triangle for a 45, 45, 90. All right, that's all I have for you right now. Go ahead and do some practice problems and then work on your Canvas quiz.